Hey, how's it going? I'm Nick, and I'm your host on the Echo Academy podcast, a podcast dedicated to uncovering helpful tools and strategies that can help make your quality of life at work better. Today's topic is on how to ace your next job interview. And to help us with this, we have Velina Loi-Collins, Managing Consultant at Career Vision Consulting. Velina started her career with the government service before moving into human resources, which included notable companies like Apple. Thereafter, Velina founded her own HR and career training and consultancy business, where she continues to play an active role in 15 years on. As a consultant with various career companies, Velina has coached and trained literally hundreds, if not thousands, of professionals over the years on job search skills during their career transition. Interestingly, irrelevant to today's topic on interviewing, Velina has trained people on both sides of the table on how to interview effectively, both as an interviewee and as an interviewer. On a personal front, Velina is happily married to an Irishman and is almost an empty nester with three young adult children whose career aspirations are aligned to their interests and strengths. If you'd like to find out more about Velina and this episode, you can go to echo.academy/Velina. That's ekho.academy/VELINA. So, without further ado, here's my eye opening interview with Velina.
Sure.
Welcome to the podcast, Velina.
Thank you, Nick. So happy to be here.
So, before we get to the main topic, which is really about how to interview and how to do it well so that you can get the job that you want, perhaps I can also kind of understand a little bit more about your background. What got you started in HR and what makes you so passionate about it?
Yeah. Actually, it's kind of strange. I end up being a career coach. I remember that when I was planning to leave the government service, after 4 great years, I would say, I thought that I'll go into public relation. Everybody said, hey, you love talking. Why don't you just go into public PR, But I mean, it's the usual thing, interviewers, and as in the past, as now, if you are doing something that's not quite the same, they don't think it's relevant experience. So they say government service is not PR. But thankfully, a HR opportunity came up, and I decided, yeah, let's just go for it. And I'm so glad. Actually, it is very similar in many ways. While PR kind of deals with the external, HR deals with the internal, but it calls on very similar skills, communication skill, interpersonal, and all that. So, and it turned out to be such a wonderful ride for me. So, kind of ironical that I didn't plan my career, but I end up in a place where I absolutely love what I do. And of course, in terms of the subsequent work that I do in career coaching, working with really many professionals who has lost their jobs, and then trying to equip them with job search skill, and that's where again the HR experience becomes really helpful. So when I'm talking about resume, I'm not talking about some theories. I'm talking about actual experience, having look at resume. We're going to talk about interview today. Again, it's not based on theories I read about, but true experience over the years. So I'm really excited that it has all come together. So really glad to be and thankful to be where I am today.
Well, I think that's true for many people, right? We never intend to end up in the career we ultimately end up in, and all the better actually. We kind of enjoy that, and we feel grateful that we somehow ended there. Sometimes it feels like fate.
In that sense, I call it divine intervention. But I think that, still, I think with that said, if we are talking about a career, it is always better to plan your career, but yet be flexible, adjust along the way. If you are given opportunities that you never thought about, go with an open mind. It may turn out to be way better than we thought. But on the other hand, I think unfortunately there are more people who might end up in careers not by choice, get stuck. So I think there are many, if not more of them out there. So I think thankfully, Nick, you and I are in a good place.
Yeah, I think so, and I'm really grateful for that. Which is a perfect segue to today's topic, which is how to handle difficult interview questions. And I think it's a good segue because sometimes we don't get the jobs we want, mainly because of the interviews and the fact that through that process we don't actually get the call that we would like to get.
Yep.
So perhaps today's session can really uncover certain things that can really strengthen, our interview process, and
Yep.
hopefully by the end of it we can take away some actionable insights from that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So perhaps maybe what we can start is, let's assume we've applied for the job and they've called us for the first interview.
Congratulations.
And I guess the start
Mm.
is, I'm sure maybe perhaps not all of us would have that perfect resume. How should we, or what is a good way for us to identify those gaps in our resume or career in relation to the job that we are applying for?
I think the first thing to clarify, or at least make sure we're on the same page. So we were talking about the weaknesses, the gaps, right? So it's really like, yeah, perhaps we didn't meet some of the requirements and we still got the call. So I think it's really important to first to remember that, hey, the interviewer has seen my resume. The interviewer has seen those gaps. But I must have met the minimum requirement for them to invite me for an interview. Nobody wants to waste time. Do you know what I mean? So there's going to be that, and we can go in confident knowing that I have met the minimum. But of course, prior to the interview, it is really important. Like it's almost like studying for an exam and spotting the questions. Like, okay, where are the gaps? Which are the requirements that we don't quite meet, and we need to be prepared for an answer. So, for example, all right, that I might be coming from a very different industry. They called me, but I'm sure they're going to ask me and they'll be concerned about this. So I need to be prepared that there's going to be a question about the industry. So I need to have a good answer to that. And then look at what are the other gaps. And, there'll be times the gap is that you don't quite have the exact experience. So then, okay, if I don't have the experience, I must have the knowledge. So make sure that you read up about it. If it's a new technology that you have not used it before, you know, one thing to remember is that when we look at the resume, the same way with interviewees, when you apply for a job, don't stop applying for a job just because I didn't meet some of the requirements. Look at the jobs in totality. I'm from a different industry. Can I still do the job? If the answer is yes, based on the job scope, all that's written, I'm absolutely confident I can do it, apply for the job. But with that said, let's just be really honest with ourselves. I remember once hiring for a client, and the job was for a Japanese speaking senior finance manager. I mean, it's like if you don't have Japanese, please don't waste time. But I still received non-Japanese speaking, applicants. You know what? It's not going to be negotiable. So that's a non-negotiable. But a lot more time, interviewers we are looking for the best fit. It may not be the perfect fit, and there must be a good reason why we call you. So be prepared, and that okay, if it's an area I don't have exact experience, I must be able to talk about it. So read up, talk to people in the field that has that relevant experience. So at least when you go in, you can say, yeah, even though I don't have that experience, I read up a lot and draw on similarities, with your other areas of experience. You can say, but, a related experience, yeah, it may not be directly relevant, but it's related. And then you can talk about the equivalent to experience. So that's how you prepare to cover the gap.
And I guess delving deeper into that, um, I mean, you mentioned something about, let's say you come from a different industry.
Yes.
Mm, and if the interviewer were to ask, hey, you're from the aviation industry, for example,
Mm.
and we're in the technology or finance industry, how are your skills transferable, or
Yeah.
how are you good for this job?
Yeah.
How do we go about, selling ourselves in a way that can show them that regardless of industry, we still match the requirements?
So I like to give, people I coach golden tips. So one tip is really like for a question like this, you focus on the similarities and you sell the differences. So, golden tip, let me repeat, focus on the similarities and sell on the differences. For example, if I'm a HR person and trying to switch industry, the similarities means to me is the Employment Act applies the same. Does not matter which industry, it's the same Employment Act. Then similarities also means it still calls for someone with great communication skill, great interpersonal skill, someone who's able to connect with all levels of staff, generally speaking. So these are the similarities. So look for similarities. Where there are differences, you want to sell it as it's not a problem. In fact, it's a plus. You want to show that coming from a different industry, perhaps it will give me new insights into old problems. And the truth is that sometimes, as you know, um, HR and people who are in talent acquisition, we really like the idea of looking outside of the industry. Otherwise, you're going to be hiring the same people with the same wavelength, and you may find that, bringing someone completely different, you can really have a breakthrough in a new idea that, a thought that is done in banking could really work in IT, something like that. So you want to do all the thinking and quote example where it might really work. So focus on similarities and sell the differences. Differences is not a handicap, it's actually a plus.
Right. So actually, that really is a golden nugget, and thanks for
Yes.
that. What if our differences is, let's say, inexperience?
Mm.
Is that something we should sell?
Inexperience is never a strength to sell, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's always in the storytelling. So
Yeah.
we always have to look, what does it mean inexperience? Can I find a better twist, to say, well, I think in terms of an inexperienced person, hopefully it's someone who's eager to learn. But look, when you go for a job interview, I'm not looking for learners. I'm looking for people who can come in and work. So don't oversell that. But if you can come in to show that yeah, it's new, but I have this great attitude to learn and I'm very fast at that. But don't just say it because then it sounds like a textbook answer. Recall is like a track record, it's like recall things that you've done that were new to you a while ago and what you went through and how good you became. Now that's proof. That's really like basically we're telling someone, look at my track record, look at the proof. I have done new things along the way. It was, yeah, challenging in the beginning, but I became successful. That's what we are talking about. So yeah, and that's a very important things to highlight because jobs are not going to stay the same. They are going to keep changing, and we all need to keep learning. So that becomes really important. So at a certain point, we are going to be inexperienced. But it's like how soon, how quickly do I get the experience? That is important.
Got it. And it's funny because one of my managers, I asked him that same question one time, and he said it's never really the experience, but your rate of learning that's important, and that
Yes.
you should always learn to master your rate of learning.
Yes.
Learn to speed it up, learn to be efficient in that, and I always try to remember that part of it.
The funny thing is that I work with many professionals who has lost their jobs. And the irony is even companies that are retrenching could be hiring. And you're wondering, what's wrong with this company? But the fact is that there's just not enough time for the existing staff to be learning. You really need to learn fast. There's so much pressure. The minute you stop learning, you're going to get into trouble. So I absolutely concur with what you have heard from your manager.
And I suppose, especially for like interview questions, I mean, how do we prepare for them? Because usually there's sometimes the HR person who contacts you will give you like a list of things that they would likely talk about, or sometimes they'll just give you like general broad guidelines. But usually you don't really know what to expect, or at least you have some idea. But what's a good way to prepare for something you can't prepare for? I suppose.
Yeah, actually, very good question and very valid, right? So sometimes interviewees think that, well, since I have no idea what questions are asked, I'm just going to go and charm myself. It's not going to work all the time. Well, another golden tip I will always give to people I coach is that while you don't control the questions asked, you control the answers that's given. So it's always about control. So you don't control the question, but you must go in to the interview quite prepared to say, you know what, for this job, there are a couple of things I need them to really hear. My experience in this area, my soft skill, everything that is tied to the job. So these are your selling points. So the trick is to really listen and see, find a way to word that into your answer. So that's what it is. For example, let me give you a quick example. Typical question. Tell me about yourself. And interviewers, I mean, I train interviewers. I say start easy. Ask them something easy like this, so they can talk about anything. So it's not a tough question. Interviewee relaxes, and that's a good place to start. But when I train interviewees, I say don't waste that question. This is a general question. You can say anything. So don't waste time on anything that is not linked to your suitability or your interest. You could start by saying, just jump straight into it. I'm so excited about today's interview. This is a job that is really my ideal job because it is so aligned with my passion, with my experience. Go from there. See what I mean? So this is where you are going to be prepared and say, these are the tough questions they're going to ask. I have the answer.
Right.
But on the other hand, I also have a list. These are the selling points. I need the interviewer to hear this, hear this, hear this. And don't walk away and say, I wish they asked me this. I wish they asked me that. You know what? This is where learn something different. You control the answer. You look for the opportunity and you kind of weave it in.
Right.
So especially when the question is general, that's perfect.
Right.
And you can really, with enough practice, you can really weave that in.
Gotcha. Well, that's really helpful. So, if I were to just clarify and just summarize that point, is really to highlight the key things that they are looking for and how it relates to you, and tie it back to the questions that they
Yes.
ask.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So always keep in mind, don't just talk aimlessly. You go there with an idea. These are their requirements, and this is what I have to offer them that are matching. So I just need to look for that opportunity to say, I've got what you're looking for.
Right. And it's funny because it seems so simple, right?
know, right?
And you would think we would all master the art of interviewing based
I
on
know.
that.
No, I think one of the thing is that this is hopefully after today podcast, that we are all learning something different. Because if you are doing the same thing, then maybe, yeah, we could do better. So whatever you hear will be quite different, but it's going to be effective. I'm sure
Right.
it makes sense, right? When I
Right,
talked
right.
about you control the answer.
Right.
So this is where we have to practice, and with enough practice, and how you tell the story, how you communicate, you could really do so much better. And then you don't walk away and say, I wish the interviewer asked me this. You don't wish, you make that happen. Make sure they hear what you have to say.
Okay.
It could be like, if you say, I missed 3 points or 2 points, you know what? As an interviewee, you have the ultimate and the last say, because an interviewer will ask, Nick, I'm done. Do you have any question for me?
Right.
So you ask your question, and when you don't have any more question, you might say something along the way, along the line. I don't have any more question, but before I go, I think there are two other points that I think that it may help for you to know, which I believe is going to, help me do this job well. And then you leave them with the last 2 points that you didn't manage to kind of weave it in the earlier question.
Right.
Interviewee, you have the last say.
Right. Oh, that's that's golden.
New thought, right?
Yeah.
New thought.
Yeah. I mean, maybe people have figured it out, but for me, whenever the interviewer asks if you have any questions, I would always actually ask them questions, but I never thought to, have the final say and to really say my piece and highlight my strengths.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
If I could just write on that as well, that it also could be a time for damage control. Talk about the gaps on the resume, and you don't have the experience. You talk about your knowledge, but you could tell from the facial expression that I don't think I won the guy over. Damage control means it's still about summarizing. I could
Right.
even call out the white elephant in the room and said, so when you ask your question, you can say something along the line. Don't have any more question, but before I go, I just want to say I can appreciate your concern about my lack of experience in this area. But when I apply for my job, it's my career success is important to me. I know
Right.
this is a job that I can do. I have enough to get the job done well, and about the area that is new. In fact, it actually excites me. That is going to be this is going to be a role that's going to stretch me, and I'm absolutely confident that it's a role I can do well. Now,
Right.
whether he believes or not doesn't matter. But
Right.
this is another time you can say it to him and do the damage control and let him understand that you are absolutely confident that this is a job you can do well.
Right. So it's almost irrespective of how they think or their perception of you, but it's more important to highlight or say the last word and say your piece so that you
Yes.
left it all on the table.
Yes. Especially when you feel that it hasn't quite gone, you know that you have done your best, but you know what? It's like I always said, you can do all that. You're not sure the response, but that's not something you can control.
Right.
But you can control and tell them, I'm absolutely confident I can do this job well. My career success is important to
Yeah.
me. So we are actually on the same page. You want to hire someone, uh, suitable. I want to go into the job where I can be successful because I've always been successful and I want to continue to be. So that's it's important. A last message that you need to leave behind.
Got it. Wow, that's maybe it would be good if we could maybe discuss some examples of that.
Sure.
And I think we've spoken about this before because I
Mm.
remember reaching out to you for this very reason, um, where and you when you took a look at my resume, you noticed like not all my job durations are long enough. So let's say for example, an interviewer were to ask, hey Nick, I noticed not all your job durations or you didn't last long in some of your jobs.
Mm.
Is this something we should be worried about, or is this something that's a habit for you?
Mm.
Like if we were confronted with questions like that, what how do we highlight that this is maybe a one-off thing, or this is something that you are trying to find an answer to and you want to prove yourself because it's just as important to you.
Yeah. I think one other point that I always make is that try to understand what's the real question behind the question. Why is it that interviewers are often quite concerned about short duration of time? Because it seems to suggest that for whatever reason it hasn't worked out. So we're trying to understand, is that is that because it's a wrong fit of the job? Or is it because, this candidate doesn't know what he wants? So we're trying to figure out what's the reason for those short duration. To me, for interview, I'm always for telling the truth.
Right.
So I never give anybody that I coach an answer without understanding. So if I were working with you, I'll be saying, so Nick, tell me, why was it so short? Tell me the full story. And then coaching will come in to say, let me coach you on how to tell that story, whatever that may be.
Right.
It's always about telling the truth, but there are different ways to tell the truth. How much truth do I tell? When do I tell? Now that takes wisdom.
Right.
It depends on how much confidence, how much trust I have with the interviewer. So I want to be truthful, but I need to be wise as well
Right.
to not get myself into trouble because I'm being too open. So I think this is where I sometimes remind people, if you interview with me, say I'm a really friendly interviewer. I'm not your friend yet. So you want to be alert. And I'm not trying to, corner you or treat you. It's just who I am, a friendly person. But from my experience, I find that sometimes people tell me a bit more than they should,
Right.
and just because they're so comfortable with me. So be glad you are with a friendly, if you interview with a friendly interviewer, but still be on the alert. Like, how much should I tell so that I won't be misunderstood? So that's the short of it. So coming back to the short duration again, it depends on what is it about. And then that's where, with a better understanding, then I can kind of like help the person through.
Right.
So we need to go a bit more specific. Yeah.
Gotcha. And maybe then if you were to go specific, maybe I can use myself as an example. And this is, yeah, I'm okay with that, right? And I suppose maybe we can bring up like my mental health issues, which we've discussed at great lengths before. Um, what if someone, like a potential employer, discovers that I had a history of mental illness. how, you know, how truthful should I be? I mean, I've never been one to hide it, but I also don't know how it will be used against me, and that's tricky. And so I'm curious, like, if something is that's that personal and something that's hard to change, how should I tackle a challenging question like that?
Yeah. I think it's, when I get the opportunities to train interviewers, I really find it very meaningful, trying to challenge interviewers to put aside their stereotypes, put aside their ignorance. I think specifically for mental health, there's so much ignorance over it. People are frightened unnecessary so. And this is where we want to kind of like, okay, I want to be truthful. I want to help them understand, but I want to I'm always for, we must always land positive. Even if I'm talking about something that's tricky, my landing where I finish is going to be positive.
Right.
So I can't hide because, if I'm sick for a while and I'm out of the job market for a while, I have to account for it. And then the way that I want to account for it is to really talk about that, yeah, I was not well, but then make it into the help them understand that this is actually a very real problem,
Right.
actually affect more people than we actually would think about. And in my personal opinion, that to me, I'm so glad, Nick, for you to come out talking about it and do something to help yourself. It's like, if for a period of time I had allergies, I need to take a Zyrtec every morning so I won't be sneezing crazy the whole day. I want to be normal. I want to be productive. I don't want to be going around with a box of tissue.
Right.
Having the Zyrtec help me just be that. So this is where people need to understand mental health. It's really like physical health. Going for treatment is like seeing a doctor. Getting medication is like, I actually want to take control of this instead of letting this mental health, this stress overwhelming me.
Right.
Taking control means I'm going to seek help. Taking control means I'm going to be taking my medication so that I can manage it better.
Right.
To me, it is more effective than trying to pretend that I'm well when I'm not, trying to put a front and doing a really lousy job. But I want to come across that I know I need a break. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to get well. I'm coming back stronger, refreshed. And I need them to see that actually that's something positive.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, I think it's going to still take a while. But first, we must believe that I have nothing to be ashamed of.
Right.
It will take a while for people to be educated about this. But my storytelling is going to be this because this is my experience. It was a difficult time. I have worked with people who have cancer,
Right.
similar. They are out for 2, 3 years. They have to declare in the application form that, because you are always asked criminal record, health issue, and then they wonder about this. Going back to the earlier part, taking control. I will always train there are the two candidates I coach, two coachee. I will tell them their last question is this. I have declared cancer that I had cancer.
Right.
How would that impact my application? You're not even interested in the answer. The answer is going to be politically correct. It won't affect. It could affect. They will be too frightened. You know what? But then I coach my candidates. Of course, I would have asked the history. How have you been? When was the last time you were hospitalized? What did the doctor say? How's the prognosis? You just state the fact. My doctor has given me a good prognosis. I'm well the last year. I'm on medication, but all's looking well. You are trying to show them again proof.
Right.
I should be okay.
Right.
Similarly for the mental health to say, I've taken time out. I'm in a really good place now because it's important to me that when I come to work, I'm able to do it well because it's important to me. I needed the time out. I took the time out. I'm ready to go.
Right.
Yeah, so that's would be my suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And maybe to probe further, what is it important to highlight the like highlight the story as a success if it is a success, or important just to highlight the facts and just let it go as soon as possible?
I think, as an interviewer, I want to also really give a balanced view. Interviewee have Interviewees have to understand that interviewer wants to make the best decision for the company. They want to hire the right person for the job. The concern over whether it's mental health or whether it's physical health is really like, compared to a average person, is this person going to be as productive? So I think if you think about that, it seems reasonable,
Right.
isn't it? It
It
seems
is, yeah.
reasonable. So when you think of that, then what you're trying to tell them then is that, and I think even before telling them, I will ask my candidates who had cancer, do you feel you're ready to go back to work? What did the doctor say?
Right.
They say, yeah, the doctor said I should be okay and all right. Then you know you're ready, because you know your life is going to be more important than the job. You know you're ready. Same whether it's mental health. I'm ready to go and face the world. So I'm going to send the message. It's not just about the job. I want to be here and know that I can manage it. I'm ready.
Right.
So it is always a positive landing. Like, I've overcome. I am ready to go. So I think that's really will be something that's very assuring for the interviewer as well. Because
Right.
they still have to take a chance, you know. But this is where you are stating the facts, saying that I'm well, and you talk about like the cancer patients, talk about the prognosis. If you have, mental health, for example, for young people, I will ask question like, tell me about your A level. Did you miss any papers?
Right.
No, I didn't. Okay, that means, I mean, that was a big exam, wasn't it? You managed in spite of your mental health. You must be doing something right.
Yeah.
So that is proof to me that, okay, then I have a bit more confidence now that Nick should be okay.
Right.
You should be able to do this quite well. And you did your degree, you didn't miss any paper, you didn't take an extra year. It's even more assuring. Again, it's in the proof that
Yeah.
look at my track record, look at all that I've done despite my state of mind. I've done it all. I should be able to do it again.
Yeah. So I guess this is similar to if you don't have the right qualifications, just show your track record more than anything else.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because we basically, this is called behavioral interview. Like if I'm an interviewer and, a trained interviewer, don't just take general comments. Ask for proof. You said you have this experience. Tell me a bit more. Ask about a specific example. That's from the interviewer. Similarly, for the interviewee, you want to assume that the interviewer is not prepared. He's not trained to ask the right question and the accurate question. But that's not going to stop you. So now you know that I'm going to help him understand I'm okay. So I'm going to give him the facts. These are the behavior. And now you can be assured that I should be okay. That
Right.
I'm well enough to come back to work.
I think this is just like a beautiful segue to the next question, which because you mentioned that sometimes interviewers are not prepared, nor
Yes.
are they trained for it.
Yes, most time they are not prepared. Most
Yeah.
time.
And I guess it's true because I've also been in a position where I've had to interview others, and I realized I don't know nearly like one single thing about interviewing right. Like maybe I know what the job requires and what
Yeah.
we are looking for, but
Yeah.
beyond that, it's hard to for me at least, it was hard to really understand how this person was valuable and how it could be valuable to us. It was more like just getting the questions out
Yes.
and hearing the things you want to hear or hearing the nice things. So
Yeah.
it was,
Yeah.
I felt it wasn't a very fair metric.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So this is where, as interviewee, which is what we're trying to talk about, you want to assume the interviewers are not trained, not prepared, and that's really most time. I say it's quite accurate. They come busy from work, just grab your resume. They have read it before. They're trying to read it very quickly. No idea what questions to ask, and just kind of make it up as we go along. But you see, this is where the interviewer will have this idea. I have the prerogative. I have many candidates I can choose from. But for the interviewee, this is your one shot. And
Right.
you're not going to lose that one shot because the interviewer is ill prepared. So you want to be very prepared And this is where you learn, even if he doesn't ask the right question, I'm going to leave what I want to leave with him.
Right.
Whether it's a last section or along the way when the questions are very convenient for me to weave that in, this is where you take control and you do well.
Right. And so if they are ill prepared, chances are they might also ask things that have a certain level of bias or discrimination.
Yeah.
Mm, how do we respond to questions like that in a respectful and professional manner without jeopardizing your your job opportunity? I might add.
That's true.
Yeah.
You know, I heard coaches ask me, "Hey, Velina, can I just tell them they are not supposed to ask me those questions? There are tripartite guidelines about that, you know." I say, you could say that, but you know, that's probably also going to be the end of the conversation, right? I said, you know what? I would always say when you go for an interview, go and really do well to win them over. Even when they ask the wrong question, give them the benefit of the doubt. Help them to ask the right question. I'll give you an example. You know, yeah, interviewers have our biasness and all that stuff, you know. I remember once, and I think it's not even at the interview stage. Let me just give you an example, all right? So I remember someone coming to me and say, "Hey, we want to hire a Chinese person." Of course, you know, my antenna will be up. Why Chinese? You know, race, no discrimination. You know, Velina, we need this person to speak Chinese. I said, okay, so it's Chinese speaking. It's not a race.
Right.
It's a language requirement. So this is where an untrained interviewer will be thinking of all this, but actually it's not a race. It is a language requirement. So I think this is where you try to say, okay, let me give him the benefit of the doubt. Let me try to understand what is it that he's trying to ask and go from there. For example, I give you another case, and they only ask women. I don't think I've ever heard any man complain.
Right.
They ask about, are you married? Do you have children? It's like, are you not supposed not to ask me those questions? Unfortunately, continue to be asked because tripartite guidelines are guidelines. Guidelines don't bite; they only buck.
Right.
Unfortunately, so this is where you try to try to understand why do they always ask the woman. I guess being a mother, I can really say, you know, a mother is quite different from a father. I was
Yeah.
in Australia before this, right? 20-year-old son in Singapore by himself. 20-year-old. And I'm still wondering, is he fat? Has he eaten? And my husband
Yeah.
is completely like, you know,
Yeah.
he'll be okay. I never even once thought about, you know, but this is what we are talking about. I
Right.
think just somehow, I think all things being equal, maybe mommy finds it a bit harder to leave the kids and go away. And a lot of time, the real question may be about there's so much traveling on this job. There's a lot of overtime. Can you do it? You know, you have kids are young. Are you okay to leave the home? You know, so they really should be asking about this job requires so much traveling. Are you okay with that? But instead of, you know, they are going to ask you a question about kids because then they're going to stereotype and say, oh, then probably you don't want to leave home that much.
Right.
So all the wrong assumptions. So help them ask the right question. So for example, if somebody is asking me all that question, I may say, oh, I'm just one. I mean, we could politely, if I have read the job requirement, I know this job requires traveling. I could very quickly say it must be linked to that. Then I say, oh, I suppose you're asking me this question probably is tied in with the traveling. Clarify. And they said, yeah, kind of, you know, with your kids and all. Oh, I'm okay. I have a really wonderful helper. And I checked in with them, and my husband is very hands on. You just want to answer the right question, which is not
Okay.
about kids and all. It's about are you able to travel?
Right.
So try to help them. And I think don't just jump into being overly defensive and
Right.
sensitive. Just take it that this interviewer is like the rest. They are so unprepared. They're so untrained. They just don't know how to ask the right question. Let me clarify. Help them ask the right question. And then let me give them the answer that they need. I'm absolutely okay with this 50% traveling.
Right.
I've always done it. Love to do it.
Okay. So the key is really not to get offended or defensive. It's more really to figure out the underlying question that they really need to know the answer to.
Yes. Yes, because it's so much easier to just say, they are so, I don't want to, join them and all that stuff. But to me, is that give them the benefit of the doubt. When you come back for the second round, you will have a better sense of the culture and the people you're going to work with. And you say, you know what? Maybe this is not where I want to be. It's really, it's really who they are. They really have all this biasness. I can see it the second time. It confirms. Do it so well that they offer you the job, but you can then turn it down if you say, I don't think this is where I want to be because I don't have that comfort level. But don't just jump into that conclusion. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Help them.
Right.
Maybe you'll be surprised. They're just
That's right.
asking the wrong question.
Right. And I suppose it's true, right? I guess sometimes we well, not sometimes, I guess always, we should always assume the best of intentions.
Yes,
And regardless of the way they say it, doesn't mean they mean it.
true,
Yeah,
true.
so yeah, I suppose, yeah, you're right, because I mean, even for me, and we were just talking about that mental health questions,
Mm.
like my first reaction is always to get defensive. I'll be like, whoa, is this a fair question to ask just
Mm.
me?
Of course,
Yeah, but
of course.
yeah, and I suppose you're right. Sometimes it's really important just to say, okay, so what is
Yeah,
the question that they want to know?
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And it even helps to say, and you try to, for example, you say, I can see where you're coming from. You're concerned about the ability to handle stress, which is which is actually we're on the same page because I've learned from the experience and I do not want it to overwhelm. And that was the reason I took time off. That's the reason I sought help and all. And I'm in a really good place because my career is important to me. So we are actually on the same page. You want to hire someone, who's suitable, who's able to come in and take the stress and all. I want to be the same. I want to go into a job where I know that I can manage this.
Right.
So we are on the same page.
Right.
So help them to see that.
Is there such a thing as questions that are required and not required? And is it something we can differentiate, and so that we kind of know what are the things we don't really have to answer?
Yeah.
Is there such a thing?
Well, I speak for at least being a Singaporean and in this place, I think interview interviews could really be at times, it kind of makes us very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Say the thing about age, for example. You're not supposed to ask about age, right? But again, like I said earlier, you can't, saying to them, you shouldn't ask me this question,
Yeah.
and now they go about a roundabout way, they were asked, like I was working with executive, assistant, and then on their resume they will show GCO level, for example. Then they will go a roundabout way and say, when did you get your O level certificate? It's like, hello, you're trying to ask me a roundabout
Yeah.
how old I am,
Yeah.
right? It's like silly, you think I'm dumb, a
Yeah.
roundabout way. So I think this is where, again, to me, is that try to quickly ask yourself, what is it that they are concerned about?
Mm.
Let me help them because I think it's
Right.
really tricky for us to say, I don't like that question. Can I pass? Or to say something like, I don't think you should be asking me that question. I don't think it's going to be good for that interview. Still do well and decide later on, I'm not going to work with them. We can be classy and gracious and all, but I think I'm always for help them to ask the right question. Say, for example, age is to be really thinking about what is behind this age thing. It's not a number, it's a stereotype. An older person is less energetic, takes more maybe medical leave, are less willing to learn. Now, if you have that in mind, then you can really say, whatever age you are, I'm not going to say mine.
Okay.
And then say, oh, that, I can tell you that I can understand. I can even show that I understand your concern. But I'm really pleased to say that I am really not the stereotypical elderly person you're thinking. For example, this new thing that I've learned, and then of course in your interaction with the interviewer, you want to show that you're energetic. You want to show that that you can look like you're in very good health,
Right.
and then of course the experience and everything. So you want to make sure that whatever that you're thinking of, I'm telling you, I'm really not the old and moldy you're thinking about, but him.
Yeah.
It's like, Nick is like I have interviewed younger person, and I will not hire them because they are just the same, lacking in energy and enthusiasm. So it's not about the number. It's
Yeah.
about what's behind that number. And
Right.
I've seen people who are so good, they look so much younger, and but it's not just about the age and all, it's about everything that's associated. So
Right.
you kind of deconstruct and say, what's age? And then, oh, this and that and that. Let me give them the answer.
Right.
That's the better way to do it than trying to fight and say, can I pass that question? No, you can't pass that question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and well, I guess this maybe is not related to that question per se, but I've always been curious about this because it's not something that happens in in every country. It's just certain countries that have a tendency to ask this question, but
Yes.
they always ask things like, "What's your expected salary?" or "How much are you earning now?"
Yes.
Is I mean, is that relevant to, because sometimes I feel by giving that amount, we've actually shortchanged ourselves for how much they're willing to pay, right?
Yes.
And we would never do that for something we're selling, yet we are so happy to give that away when we're interviewing. So I'm
Yeah.
just curious, like how do we figure this one out?
Well, that one we need another podcast altogether. Yeah. So this is again, it's a very tricky situation. Not even expected pay is like your current pay.
Yeah.
So I think, I have heard people say, you know what, Velina, actually, it's an irrelevant question. What the interviewer should tell me is that, tell me how much they're willing to pay, and I'll tell you whether I'll take the job. I say that sounds very reasonable. But I say, on the other hand, and maybe this is where it helps because I interview,
Yeah.
and I think it helps people to understand actually asking those questions are reasonable questions.
Right.
For example, I've hired for a non-profit organization as well.
Right.
So I've hired a banker from a really good bank. I hired a lawyer from a very good law firm. I know they're paid a lot. So the question is really about motivation. So when I ask about, can you tell me your current pay? I want to understand what is the gap. Why are you willing to take that 40% gap? In fact, I want to be persuaded that why would you want to come and work with this non-profit organization and your lifestyle? So it's a question about motivation,
Right.
and of course the other thing is that when I ask current pay, for me anyway, to me it's always about you want to come across as an interviewee that I want to be open, I want to trust you, and so I'm going to give you the information. So when you give me information, you actually are sending me the message, I trust you to tell you. All right. But of course, we also need to be wise, and I'll tell you the second. So I feel that when the question is asked about current pay, it's a reasonable question because immediately it will help me understand, all right, how big is the gap if you know where you are? Because all things being equal, we all want our last drawn pay, if not higher.
Right.
So that's almost like minimum threshold. All
Yeah.
right. So to me, it's a reasonable question. But as an interviewee, I would train interviewee to say that's not the real question. Because when I ask you current pay, it is actually, I'm thinking that's your minimum expected pay.
Right.
So when you answer the current pay, you might say, this is my current pay. Then answer the question they didn't ask. Then you say, but my expected pay is negotiable. And a lot of time it is because it depends on the job.
Right.
It depends on the total compensation. It depends whether I want to even work with this person who's supposed to be my boss.
Right.
Many, many factors. If they push me now, I can honestly say it's a bit too premature to talk about my expected pay because it's really a whole factors of, job and all. And then we leave it. But yet, there'll be time they will still push. And the truth is, when we go for a job interview, we do have a minimum expected pay.
Right.
So when it really get pushed, and even if we feel that, okay, time to review, I may review the number and yet still say, with that said, I'm really still open to the idea because pay is important, but it's not the only thing.
Yeah.
And then land positive. I'm here because I'm really excited about the job and the company. And I'm just so glad to be here. I'm sure by the time we get to the pay question, we can talk about that again. And
Right.
I think it's also to, as interviewee, I know sometimes like when do I show hand and all that stuff, right? But I think we want to go trusting that, you know what, I'm going to trust that they will do a fair deal, and we will have a good discussion later. Of course, there'll be the exception to the rule where people will exploit and all. But you know what? It doesn't matter what they want to pay. Ultimately, I know what I'm going to ask.
Right.
After all the conversation and everything, I'm still going to be asking for more if I feel that, yeah, that's my minimum. I'm going to ask for
Right.
more than what they're going to pay. Whether they're going to offer or not, I'm just going to leave it. I'm still going to be asking for that.
Right.
Yeah, so I think it's like, again, it always comes back to what's the real question.
Right.
And then, yeah, and then just go from there.
And what if you say your expected salary, but what they were willing to pay is much higher than that?
Oh,
Have you have wouldn't you have shortchanged
yeah,
yourself? I mean, because they'll be like, aha,
yeah,
I can afford to
yeah.
pay this person much less.
Good question. Now, depending on the company, if you're talking about multinational, this is where we will work with salary structure, and we will really, really believe in doing the right thing, because it's a very penny wise and pound foolish. People will be talking about pay. And if later on you realize, oh my goodness, I've been so shortchanged, you're going to be demoralized. And then it's going to be like, it's just not wise,
Right.
And then this is where and I have experienced, and, other cases as well, they end up getting more. It's like, oh wow. Because you know what? Multinational, we trust that they have their structure, we trust that they want to do the right thing. They will pay at least the minimum of the salary grade. So I think that we can have certain amount of confidence
Right.
and said that, because will you know whether they have shortchanged you? You may never know
Yeah.
until you start talking, and then you might wonder. And that's where all the problems come, right?
Right.
So the companies that is enlightened will know that it's just not wise.
Right.
To do
Okay.
the right thing means I got to pay right. And I remember a conversation I had with a young HR person. That was a good day, because his idea was, but I want to save my company's money. The less I pay is better, right? I say, no. Your challenge, I tell him, is that to always try and meet the expected pay of your candidate if it's within your budget. Won't you want the person to come in and say, "Oh, they paid me what I wanted, and my heart is settled. I'm happy coming in." That is a good day for that young HR officer,
Right.
because he suddenly realized that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah. So it's not about saving money per se, but it's like, if it's still within my salary range, I try to match. I will, because then I know you'll be happy, and then that would be great for us when you come in happy, all excited. Then, oh, I wish they paid me a bit more. Do you know what I mean?
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So to summarize all that we've spoken, um, basically when someone asks what's your current salary, um, trust them enough to be open about it, but then also mention your expected salary, but at the same time, if you say that you really are passionate and you really want to be part of this company and to be this job, so it's also negotiable.
yeah,
And
in that sense, so where the current salary is a factual thing, but when it comes to expected pay, if you can help it, don't give a figure. It's basically to say that, when it comes to the expected pay, I'm absolutely open about it, because it's really more than just a compensation. So that's the message that you need to send. Now, I
right.
think with that said, right, I must say that this is how I feel. There could be other interviewers who feel very differently, or interviewers say, nope, die, I'm not going to disclose.
Right.
Yeah, but to me, I always find that when I interview, it's like, I expect you to be open, because I will be as open.
Right.
And from my experience, if I feel that I'm really like trying to squeeze blood from stone, that'll be the end for me.
Right.
Because the message I'm getting is that I don't trust you enough, Velina, to tell you. And it annoys me.
Mm-hmm.
That would be one thing that annoys. I can deal with the truth. I had people who tell me they are leaving the job, looking for a new job because they can't work with their supervisor. You read textbooks about interview, they probably say don't say something like that.
Yeah.
But I'm for telling the truth because I'm old enough to know that the managers, the supervisor may not always be right, or the people that I want to work with. We know the saying, I believe in it. You don't leave the job, you leave the manager.
Yeah.
That's true. So
I would
I'm long
agree.
enough working and I have my own experience. There are some people I would leave, you know, and this person was offered the job because I can handle the truth. When you tell me the truth, and that's what actually is often easier. When you try to cook up something else, something is going to fall apart because
Right.
that's not truth.
Yeah.
The truth is always going to be the same. But of course, how do we say it? So don't focus on the personality of the manager you can't work. A lot of time, it might be the management style.
Hmm.
So you talk about the management style, that this is not the style where I thrive, where I do my best. And that's the reason I'm looking for a place where I could really do my work, where the environment is conducive, the style is, aligned with my style. That's so much better than say that's micromanager or
Right.
whatever it may be. So it's not a personal attack. It's about style and staying positive at all time and talking about I have to go because I will thrive and do better if we were a different style. This
Hmm.
is suffocating. I'm not doing my best job here. I
Right.
need to go somewhere because my career is important to me. That's a better story to tell. So the truth
Yeah.
can always be told. Do you know what I mean? The truth can. I've worked with people with criminal records as well. I mean, community work and all. It's really, really coming to terms to be able to say to potential employer, I spend time behind bar. Sometimes it's juvenile, delinquency as they call it, right? I've learned my lesson. I'm looking for that one special employer who will give me a second chance. I'm not going to blow it. I wasted many years. I'm not going to waste it. I will truly appreciate and I will definitely going to do it well.
Right.
And you hope that it moves somebody. And to me that's a better story to tell than trying to cook up that, the different jobs that you were not doing but pretend to be doing.
Right.
So the truth is always the better answer.
Right. I feel I feel like based on everything that you've mentioned, um, telling the truth, highlighting your strengths, and being authentic about it seems to be like the overarching theme, to kind of build that trust and that sense of confidence for the interviewer to feel like, you're worth a shot regardless of, you know,
Yeah.
your
But
resume.
Nick, the sad thing is, I mean, I just want to be realistic, I also have, I mean, it's sad. I've worked with people who have been wrongly dismissed.
Hmm.
And, again, the form, sometimes you ask question. And even with the best of, you know, with the, after being coached and trying to tell the story, the interviewer may still choose to, you know, not take the chance
Right.
because just assume that, well, something must be very wrong. But it's wrongful dismissal.
Right.
I remember one case whereby this coachee absolutely wanted to tell the truth, knew how to tell it, but he went away so discouraged when the interviewer from HR told him, you know what, why don't you leave this many months of employment out of your resume, pretend that it's not there. I mean, it's like coming from HR, the interviewer. Of course, the coachee was absolutely just, he knew that it's over in that
Right.
sense and didn't know how to handle. But I told him, you should have asked the guy and said, that's a good suggestion, but I'm just wondering if you were to hire me, would you really like me to be honest at work? Or would you, if something goes wrong, would you really like me to just hide the problem or be truthful and find a way to resolve the problem
Right.
and leave it as such? Because, he can say all that. Basically, you just ask him, is that what you're telling me that you're willing to hire a liar over someone who's telling you the truth? Just leave it at that. But,
Right.
this is where, but I think what is important is who we are. And we want to ask ourselves, you know, um, What do I stand for? Do I want to always tell the truth because this is what I believe? If it means I wait a little bit longer for someone to believe me, and there will be someone who believes you, because this is more important.
Right.
And your story will stay, because if you go in, you got the job because you like, and it pricks you on your conscience, you know what? It's not going to be a very nice journey ahead. You're going to
Right.
feel guilty and all. Or would you rather say the best that you can and hope that the interviewer will be wise enough, enlightened enough to say he can handle the truth?
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. And well, final question, but I mean, it wasn't in my planned questions,
Mm.
but we were talking about salary, and
Yeah.
uh, and it's so funny because uh, one of my friends was just mentioning it. Was it yesterday's? Yeah, it was the day
Amazing.
before. The day before, he was saying, I never know how to negotiate when they provide me with an offer, and sometimes I feel like I can earn more than that. How What would you advise someone who's trying
Yeah.
to negotiate for a higher pay?
This is where we always, yeah, we need to ask, why are we asking for the higher pay? Sometimes people think that just because I change a job,
Yeah.
I need to have a higher pay.
Right.
Yes and no. It's always going to be like, how much do they want to bring you over? I work with a lot of people who has lost their job. So, sometimes they feel that, am I being exploited? Let me explain it. It's not about being exploited. It's about, see, if you are available now, you're not taking a big risk in that sense. You're not leaving a company to join me. So I don't have to dangle a carrot. But if you're with a company working, settled in the job, and I want to entice you to move, I have to dangle a carrot to say, come join me, take the risk with me.
Right.
So it's not about being exploited if you lose your job and you're going for a job interview. And it's really about, okay, to understand that I'm not exploited, but yes, the carrot is gone. And yes, there seems to be less risk. I'm not giving up something to come. But I will still say that, you know what? After you have understood the job, and if you feel that, wow, this job is really way bigger than, the job I have done, and I can do it for sure, or it's the same, but I need to do more traveling. The fact that I'm out of a job should not stop me for asking for more. Because when I negotiate, it's based on my experience and the job and the total compensation, nothing to do with my employment.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So this is where you must have confidence to say no. And I always say, ask. Ask, maybe you'll receive. If you don't ask, you're never going to receive.
Yeah.
And you rather ask what you think you deserve, even though it may seem like a crazy number. But of course, I say, why do you have that crazy number? Then you want to say, because I've done my research, this seems to be. Then ask for that number and find a way to justify why you are asking for this. There must be good reason. I remember when I left the government service, generally speaking, the government just does not pay as well as the private sector. Of course, I'm going to ask for more.
Right.
So it's justifiable. So you want to say, why am I asking? You can't just say, I feel it. That's not going to be good enough. You got to do your research,
Yeah.
then check and all. And of course, survey number is something. But if you check and the survey number seem to suggest that, then you ask and say, based on this is my expectation. And don't be afraid to ask. If you don't get it, at least you can settle your heart and say, at least I tried. But if you don't ask and then you walk away feeling bad, but you can't blame them because you have not opened your mouth to ask.
Right.
They don't know what you're thinking about. Because when they ask you, you quote this number when you have a higher number, how can you blame them for not considering your higher number?
Right.
Do you know what
Right.
I mean? So ask, be bold and ask, but just kind of like try to find a way to justify, especially when the number is big. Then yeah, you try and justify why you're asking for that and then go from there. So just be bold and ask.
Right.
That's what I would say.
Okay. Well, Belina, this has been really enlightening, I must say. I've learned so much, and I'm sure there'll be people who will have more questions or would like to engage in 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 this type of coaching.
Mm.
So maybe before we end, if you could let the audience or listeners know Like if they would like coaching, from someone who can
Mm.
teach them how to interview right and to interview well,
Yeah.
how can they reach you?
All right. So I think I could I leave my contact details with
I
you? Yeah.
absolutely, yeah, you
And
absolutely can.
definitely, check me up, connect with me on LinkedIn, Velina Loi-Collins. And yes, and I really love what I do. And I'm such a poor salesman, okay?
It's okay, I'll do
in
it
that
for you.
sense, in that sense, that I never push, oh, you got to do this fixed program and all
Yeah,
that stuff. No, it's going to be a lot is really like, hey, tell me what is it that you want? Go on a need basis. I'm really happy to do it like per session, and also it's really, really flexible. And that's what my business is all about. Yeah. So because it's really I'm still thankful my husband brings in the bacon, so I could just be very kind of very flexible on this in that sense. But
right.
so yeah, so connect with me and yeah, tell me how I can be of help, and happy to help, yeah, in
Yeah.
any way I could be of service.
Yeah, and to add on, I'll definitely put the details up. Whatever you want to share with
Sure.
me, and then I'll do the salesmanship for you, because I think your insights are really valuable.
Thank
I've
you.
learned it, and I think it's an absolute privilege that we receive so much for free this time. So, happy to promote for you.
Yeah, happy to be here because if I could just recap about interviewing, some key point is really remember you control the answer, even if you don't control the question. Remember, you have the last say. Always, you have the last say. So be prepared. Questions about gap, you have the answers. But go in also with your selling points in mind. Find a way to weave that in. And at all times, you stay positive and selling yourself. So even when the interviewers are asking the wrong question, you're going to sell yourself. You're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. You're going to stay positive.
Right.
Do it so well that they offer you the job, then you turn it down if you don't like all that you hear after that.
Yeah, words to live by. Thank you so much, Felina, for
Thank you.
coming.
So glad to be here.
All right.
Thanks, Nick.